He was handcuffed in the middle of the day, all because he looked suspicious, but the officers had no idea the black man they had just arrested was actually a judge. The very next day, he would be the one presiding over their case, exposing a broken system that had failed everyone. What happened next? It will shock you. But first, let's go back to the beginning. In the bustling downtown of Silver Springs, Officer Bradley and Officer Carter patrolled the streets with an air of dominance, their presence unmistakable. Their reputation? Known all too well. They had a habit of stopping those they believed didn't belong. Whispers of their actions spread through the community, though few dared to challenge them. On this day, their focus locked onto a man who, in their eyes, seemed out of place. Martin Green, a middle-aged black man with a quiet yet undeniable authority, stepped out of a sleek black sedan parked near City Hall. His navy suit, crisp and well-tailored, was complemented by a neatly folded pocket square and polished leather shoes. In his hand, he carried a worn leather briefcase, a testament to years of hard work and dedication. He moved with purpose, exuding confidence. But to Officers Bradley and Carter, his refined appearance wasn't a sign of professionalism, it was a red flag. "Sir, stop right there," Bradley barked, his hand instinctively hovering near his holstered weapon. His tone carried the weight of presumed authority, sharpened by something far more dangerous: prejudice. Martin paused mid-step, turning slowly, disbelief flickering in his eyes. His face, composed, showed only the briefest hesitation before he spoke. "Officers, is there a problem?" His voice was steady, measured, completely devoid of panic. That response? It unsettled them. "We've had reports of a vehicle matching yours involved in a theft nearby," Carter said, feigning concern. The accusation? Completely fabricated. Yet, Martin's calm composure only seemed to provoke them further. Martin raised an eyebrow, his voice unwavering. "That's a serious accusation. May I see the reports?" Bradley's jaw clenched, irritation flashing across his face. "Hands where I can see them. You're under arrest for obstruction of justice," he snapped, escalating the situation without cause. Passers-by froze, their faces a mix of shock and unease. Phones emerged, recording everything. Martin didn't resist. His movements were deliberate, his voice low but firm. "You're making a grave mistake." The officers? They just laughed. They had no idea of the storm they had just unleashed. Inside the precinct, Martin Green sat in a holding cell, calm, a stark contrast to the chaotic hostility that surrounded him. Bradley and Carter, their arrogance bolstered by the false power of their badges, took every opportunity to mock him. "Thinks he's some kind of big shot," Bradley sneered. "Guess he thinks staying quiet makes him look innocent," Carter smirked. Martin's expression didn't waver. His silence? Unshakable. Every request for a phone call? Dismissed. Instead, they subjected him to hours of pointless questioning, less about facts, more about control. But outside the precinct, a very different story was unfolding. Videos of the arrest, recorded by bystanders, began circulating online. Every injustice was captured: the baseless accusations, the aggressive handling, the way Martin had remained dignified through it all. Outrage spread like wildfire. Activists and community leaders demanded accountability. News anchors debated the footage. Hashtags calling for justice exploded across social media. But inside the precinct, Bradley and Carter remained oblivious, reveling in their so-called triumph. To them, Martin was just another statistic, just another arrest. They had no idea they had detained someone far more important than they realized. Finally, Martin broke his silence. His voice, calm yet commanding, cut through the air as he addressed the sergeant on duty. "I need to contact my office. I have court tomorrow." The sergeant chuckled, leaning back. "Court? What? You think you're going to defend yourself in front of a judge?" Martin's gaze remained steady. "No." A pause. "I am the judge." The smirk vanished. Silence fell over the room. A keyboard clattered as the sergeant frantically checked the database. His face paled as the truth flashed across the screen. Martin Green, Justice of the Peace. presiding judge of Silver Springs Municipal Court. Panic spread through the precinct. The storm they had unleashed? It was about to crash down on them. The next morning, the courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Journalists scrambled for position, cameras trained on the entrance. Community members, many of whom had watched Martin's unjust arrest unfold online, filled the gallery, faces tight with anger, curiosity, and disbelief. The tension? Palpable. And then, silence. Martin Green entered. Dressed in his judicial robe, he walked with steady confidence, his presence commanding respect. No longer the man in handcuffs, he now sat in judgment. Then, officers Bradley and Carter entered. Their usual bravado?
Gone.
Their faces?
Pale.
Their eyes? Darting around the room, avoiding the piercing gaze of the man they had humiliated just hours before. Martin's voice rang out, firm and resolute. Officers Bradley and Carter, you stand accused of racial profiling, unlawful arrest, and abuse of power. Do you have anything to say in your defense? Their words fumbled out, disjointed, unconvincing. Weak excuses. They claimed they were just following protocol. They claimed they acted on a report. But the evidence? Overwhelming. The courtroom reviewed the viral videos, Martin's composure against their aggression. Witnesses testified to the fabricated accusations and excessive force. And Martin's record? Impeccable. A dedicated judge, a man who had served his community with honor. The irony? Impossible to ignore. They had arrested a man on his way to meet the mayor, to discuss community reform. And in doing so, they had exposed the very corruption he sought to fix. By the end of the hearing, the truth had shattered their narrative. The verdict came swiftly. Officers Bradley and Carter, suspended without pay, pending further investigation. The scandal was no longer internal. It was public outrage. The police chief, under immense pressure, issued a public apology. But no apology could erase the damage. The department's reputation? In ruins. As for Martin, he refused to let bitterness consume him. Instead, he turned his ordeal into action. With newfound public support, he led an initiative to reform law enforcement in his city, mandatory training, racial bias dismantling, real community engagement. His wrongful arrest? It had sparked something far bigger. Protests spread. Statewide reforms followed. Accountability measures were strengthened. Months later, standing on the steps of City Hall, Martin watched as a new generation of police recruits, trained under his reforms, walked into the academy. Determined, hopeful, a vision of law enforcement built on equity and respect. Martin allowed himself a faint smile. The fight? Far from over. But progress? Worth every step.